I'm going to go ahead with the meeting beginning ritual.
起立，面向佛堂，参加三鞠躬、一鞠躬、再鞠躬、三鞠躬，参加各位点传是一鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下。Please be seated. I want to spend a moment to talk about this character, xuan. So in modern Mandarin, when you say xuan, a lot of times you will hear it when people say, describe something as being difficult to understand. When they say 很玄, 很 is a very commonly used character. It means very, 很. Like when you say good, 好, 很好, very good. So 很玄, very 玄. So 玄 in this case will be difficult to understand, mysterious, or in our context, mystical. So when we put it next to the character for virtues, 德, we're talking about a virtue that's mysterious, mystical, or difficult to understand. So the reason why 玄德 is called 玄德 is because it's a virtue that to many people will seem rather hard to understand. So I want to make sure that we completely talk about the reason why that is, and the reason why Tao cultivators and sages practice 玄德. So let's do it methodically. Let's do it systematically. So in Pinyin, it looks like this. And this would be, for those who have not studied Mandarin, have not studied Pinyin, it would be tricky to sound this out. So let me just explain that it sounds like xuan de. So it's not di, it's not de, it's de. And x here is more like sh, xuan de. So literally, the two characters mean mystic and then virtue. Now, if you were to call it mysterious virtue, that's okay. Although, mysterious carries a whole bunch of context. So first of all, let's talk about what it is. It's if you look back in the chapter, you notice that it's the combination of the previous 3 lines. I'm showing 2 here, but it's 14, 15, and 16. So it's a combination of 3 different characteristics. Number 1, not being possessive of what you create. That is, you have total willingness to share your work with the world. Number 2, not being arrogant despite what you have accomplished and or the excellence of your work. Sometimes people become arrogant because of the great works that they have done. Other times, it might not be a huge amount of work, but it's of excellent quality, and therefore they become arrogant. So there's a number 3, not being domineering over those who you have nurtured, feeling no need to control anyone. So despite having nurtured and helped people, someone with mystic virtue would feel no desire to interfere with their lives, to control them, to dominate over them. So having seen mystic virtue as a combination of 1, 2, and 3, I want to logically go to the next question, and that is, well, why are they difficult to understand? I mean, looking at 1, 2, and 3 here, I don't see anything that's too difficult here. I can understand not being possessive. I can understand not being arrogant, to be humble. I can understand not being domineering. What's so hard to understand about that? That's the next slide. Why is it mystical, mysterious, or difficult to understand? Well, it's called xuande because it's opposite or it runs counter to what most people do. What do most people do? They usually try to squeeze every bit of advantage out of a situation. So, using the same three overall areas, let me explain. What most people do when they have something that they have created, it could be a work of art, it could be maybe, so perhaps a painting or a song, it could be software they have written, it could be something perhaps a novel or a story they have written, or it could be any number of other things. So people have a tendency to be possessive, proprietary, protective of what they create in order to hype up its value. So remember, this is no longer talking about protecting intellectual property rights or respecting copyright laws. This is about an overzealously protective attitude in keeping something a quote unquote secret, like a trade secret, secret recipe, something that you guard jealously. And the reason why they want to do that is because they want to extract more value out of it or to hype up, to increase its value, perceived value. Number two, people don't tend to be humble. They tend to get arrogant when they have accomplished something. And in fact, people get arrogant when they have accomplished something that is not so great. Maybe the scale isn't so grand. It's just, kind of there. Maybe the quality is not fantastic, mediocre. It's perhaps mediocre or unremarkable. Even that causes people to become rather arrogant. Never mind when they have created something that is deemed to be good, of a high quality, then chances are even more that they get arrogant. They become full of themselves. They want to be seen as important. So to be seen as important, to become arrogant in that fashion, to draw attention to yourself, these are ways to hype up one's personal value. So number one is about hyping up the value of something, an invention, some sort of work, perhaps a novel that you have written. You hype it up as the great American novel. To become arrogant is to hype up yourself. Everybody look at me. I am so great. Mine is the mind that has given rise to this beautiful, wonderful, miraculous thing here. Me, me, me. So that's number two, hyping up your own value. Number three, people can be controlling. They lord over or boss around people they have helped in some way. So this is another way of increasing value. In this case, it is to increase one's social standing. Like, I've helped you and you and you, so you all owe me something. You owe me allegiance, and I get to tell you what to do. I get to control you. I get to look over what you're doing because after all, I'm the one who helped you. I am your sifu, and now you have to listen to me. You have to do what I say. You'll have to not question me. So here we're talking about hyping up the value of one's position. So these three together are the reasons why most people don't do what seems kind of common sense on the surface. So the mystic virtue is, hey, be humble, don't be arrogant, and let people be. Don't interfere with them. Don't tell them what to do. Don't meddle in their business. And also, hey, while you've created something good, don't get possessive. Share it. Those seem like common sense, and yet when we look at the world, when we look at society, we see the opposite. We see people trying everything they can to increase the value of everything about themselves. Their creation, number one, their personal selves, number two, and number three, their position. So it's mystical, it's mysterious, because it is in fact not what people do. So let's bring it back to what Tao cultivators do. So first of all, if you do the same thing, if you go against the Tao in the same way, things work out poorly. They don't work out well. Why not? What's the harm of me protecting something that I have created? I guard it jealously. I call it my secret. I don't share with anyone. Maybe I dole out just a little bits and pieces at a time. Why wouldn't I do that? It's mine. Well, usually the people that do that, things don't end well for them because something better comes along. So people lose interest in what you've been guarding so jealously. Perhaps it is a secret behind an invention that you have created. Maybe it's a product and you are protecting it, with business secrets, trade secrets, and whatnot. Now, it may be a valuable innovation, but the nature of life is that it constantly continues to change. So something else will come along. And people will direct their attention to that instead of what you've been guarding so jealously. So number one doesn't work out well. Number two, if you become arrogant, you think a lot of yourself, what can happen is when people perceive the arrogance, they withdraw their support. And they may not really bother to tell you that's what they're doing. They just become more distant naturally. And you notice that probably you have seen yourself doing the same thing. If you think back on life, when you have encountered people who were unbearably arrogant, you've also had a natural tendency to back away, to withdraw. So if you are that way, if you get that way, become full of yourself, perhaps without you being aware of it, people are backing away. And number three, about being controlling, well, that's not going to work out well for you either, because people you try to control or manipulate will all seek the first opportunity to jump ship. Basically, to get as far from you as they can. This is also something that I have seen in life. I have seen people who try to control, manipulate everything and everyone around them. And these, I am sad to say, are the loneliest people. So they desperately want to be surrounded by other people, good friends, good cheer, good company, fellowship, camaraderie. They want all that. So they go overboard in trying to keep people with them, trying to tie people to them. And it always backfires. They end up with nobody around. So let's wrap up the discussion on xuande, mystic virtue. So things don't work out well if you go against the Tao in the same fashion like most people do. So what to do if you want to practice the Tao? What to do if you want to cultivate the mystic virtue? First, you realize that the more you try to maximize your rewards in life, so that's what most people do. That's the context in which it makes sense, is that they're all trying to maximize their rewards. by hyping up the value of something they're keeping proprietary, by hyping up their own value as individuals, or by elevating their position in society. The more they seem to start out at a disadvantage. People are like, well, why are you giving your invention away so freely? Wouldn't you want to make a lot of money? Keeping this a secret and milk it for all it's worth. So they don't do that. They share with the world. So they seem to start out at a disadvantage. But somehow they always end up with rewards, recognition, and respect without ever seeking or needing them. And that's why it's mysterious. This kind of people, they live in joy, they perfect their craft, they attain excellence effortlessly. Part of the reason is because they know that Tao is an infinite resource, so they keep going back to it to get more and more and more, and they don't mind sharing because of it. And because they never get arrogant, they continue to practice and perfect their craft until they get really, really good at it. And then even then, they don't stop. Then they become transcendent. They go beyond expectations. So all of this can seem magical or miraculous, but that at the end of the day, it's just the Tao. So hopefully by now, you have seen the importance of practicing the three different things when it comes to xuande.
So a bunch of slides I call an example of mystic virtue, and it may kind of surprise you because without preaching the virtue of vegetarianism or veganism, I'm going to talk about that for just a moment. So if you disagree with vegetarianism, that's totally okay. Just imagine that I'm talking about like a steakhouse. It would actually apply because the Tao is something that applies universally. So when people find out that I became a vegetarian, about a decade ago, I went through the vegetarian vow. They would then ask, if they are a fellow vegetarian or perhaps a vegan, they will ask about the different restaurants. Because after all, vegetarianism is still the minority option, not just here, but elsewhere in the world as well. So people who are into that, they want to know, hey, what's a good restaurant? So they're asking me about my opinions in regards to some vegetarian restaurants. So they'll name a particular one that's well known here in the West. And they'll point to ones that are said to be the best. And they'll ask, hey, have you been there? And if you have, what do you think of it? So they are surprised when they ask about that because I will be very, very sincere, answering the question honestly, and I will tell them that on a scale from 1 to 10, usually the best vegetarian restaurants here in the West, to me, are either like a 7 or 8 would be rare. So this will take them by surprise. So then naturally, they will say, well, if the best is in the United States is a 7 or 8, well, then what's a 9 or 10? So I would tell them about one example, which in my opinion is a solid 9. This place right here. This is a restaurant in Taipei. So whenever I travel back to Taiwan, I make it a point to visit that restaurant. If I could, I would be going to that restaurant every single day for every meal, except that I can probably only go once a day because by the end of a visit, I will be completely stuffed for the entire day. So this is a high-end, elite-level vegetarian buffet restaurant in Taipei. The name, as you can see in the big sign over here, is 莲香斋. So 莲 is lotus, 香 means fragrance, so lotus fragrance. Zai will be like a small restaurant, but it's actually quite big. The name in English, a lot is lost in the translation. It's Jian Dao. Nobody knows what Jian Dao is. Vegetarian restaurant. That's the English down here. Well, Jian Dao is a romanization of the old name of this restaurant. Used to be called Ren Dao. So Jian Dao, I know it doesn't really sound like Ren Dao, but that's kind of the best they could do with their limited understanding of English. And Ren Dao, what it means is humane. So it was you can tell it's a Ren Dao restaurant. That's a reasonable name for a vegetarian restaurant because vegetarianism prides itself in being humane. So here's a couple of customers going into this Jianyan buffet. So what is so special about the food in this restaurant? And also other people will ask, why do you call that a 9? So then what's a 10? Okay, well, we're going to get there one step at a time. When other people visit Taiwan, I always send them the link to that particular restaurant, and then I tell them that, well, it's an experience not to be missed. So what's so great about their food? Well, I can put it this way. They have so much, and everything is so good that it is literally true that if you take 1/10 of what the restaurant offers, and it could be any 1/10, if you walk into this restaurant buffet and you pick and choose just any 10 things at random, you could take that back in the United States, and if you can offer that quality consistently, same recipe every time, you can actually build a better restaurant than the best that are over here. So that's how great this particular restaurant is. Even though everything is meatless, there's such a wide variety of different flavors. It really opens up a new world in terms of what people understand about cuisine and eating. One of the reasons why it's at such a high level is that Taiwan as a whole has a foodie culture. A lot of times I am very surprised and impressed in the United States when it comes to music. Okay, again, a different world, but hear me out. I'm coming back around to food. I often encounter people for the first time, and I meet with them, I get to know them as individuals, and then later on, very often, I discover that they have musical talent. And it always impresses the heck out of me because I have none whatsoever. So I think everybody has seen or heard of the movie Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Well, in Chinese, in Mandarin, it's actually 卧虎藏龙. What it means is not necessarily martial arts. It means that there are people out there with hidden talents that are not immediately apparent upon your first meeting them. So those hidden talents are the crouching tigers and hidden dragons. It's speaking metaphorically. So literally, it is true that in the United States, you can encounter people who are supremely talented with music just walking down the street. Now, imagine that same thing, same crouching tigers and hidden dragon, same hidden talents, when you're walking down the street in Taiwan. Like every other person, every person there knows some truly remarkable chefs. And some are just like housewives who are cooking for their family, their relatives and loved ones, and they just love to figure out different ways to make different foods, and they're really great. And even so, it's very, very common in Taiwan to find people who can cook up a storm to a level that I would characterize as a number 8 in my personal scale from 1 to 10. Well, number 8, that's equal to the best restaurant here. Yep, that's true, and I actually mean that. So if this particular place is a number 9, then what's a number 10? Well, there's a couple of number 10s that I have encountered when I went back to Taiwan. One is a person who has passed away. The other one is a restaurant that, a much, much smaller restaurant than this one. A much smaller restaurant than this one that you're seeing here, but the restaurant has also closed. So I currently don't have a number 10, but I do have experience of number 10s. Probably next time I go back to Taiwan, it's very likely that I will be invited to a whole bunch of different number 10s. But let me tell you about the number 10s. The restaurant that I went to several times that I would characterize as a number 10, they specialize in a soup dumpling. The soup dumpling is completely vegetarian, full of flavor, and it looks like a small dumpling, but when you bite into it, there's hot soup, hot, thick soup that comes out. So how do they make that? Well, very carefully, they make that with the ingredients. They use this gelatin that is made from soup stock, so that when it encounters heat, it will melt into thick broth. Anyhow, it's amazing. So it's too bad that this tiny restaurant closed down. I haven't seen another one like it. So the person who personifies number 10, in my personal estimation, is a chef that I'll call Mrs. Chen. Chen is a very common surname in Taiwan. This particular Mrs. Chen, she is my wife's godmother, so I basically follow her, and so my wife calls her Chen Gamma, and so I follow and do the exact same thing. That's sort of that's a custom. So Mrs. Chen has a divine talent when it comes to cooking. She has cooked for celebrities in Taiwan, and she has the ability to turn anything into incredibly delicious meals, and she has recipes. And I noticed while I was back in Taiwan eating her food, that she acted in a way that was very much congruent with mystic virtue. So mystic virtue actually applies to cooking too. That's the reason why I wanted to use it as an example. Then later on, I would encounter other chefs who are also very talented, but they were not exactly at the level of Mrs. Chen. And then I realized that these lesser chefs acted in a way that was very different from mystic virtue. So I think if I were to compare the way that they behaved, the way they acted toward others, I think you can get a really good idea what mystic virtue is all about. So that's going to be my next slide after the break. I'll park it here for now. Lesser chefs versus Mrs. Chen. So we are past the halfway point in our meeting. It is now 11:35. We should be taking a 5-minute break and come back at around 11:40. And in the meantime, I will send out a link to what I was referring to. So let's go ahead and take 5. I'm going to go on mute for just a moment, for 5 minutes. Okay, guys, I am back in the conference. I've sent the link out, so if someone can try it and let me know if it's working, that will be great. Oh, hey, thanks, Francis. I'm glad to hear the audio is good. And just in case people are not getting that link, let me try to send it out by the chat window as well. And by the way, Francis, did you mean the audio from the YouTube video or the audio from me? And I'm referring to Francis with an I. We do have Francis with an E. Oh, okay. All right. So while people are checking out the that video clip, I think I can continue and talk about how Mrs. Chen embodies mystic virtue. So when I look at the other chefs who wish that they could be like Mrs. Chen, but they can't quite rise to her level of divinely inspired talent when it comes to cooking, I notice that they are definitely behaving in different ways. So to be specific, number one, I notice they take a lot of pride, way too much pride in doing what they do. Now, there's no doubt about the fact that their food is great. I mean, to be able to get to like 8, that's amazing. And some of them can get to a 9 in my personal scale from 1 to 10. So that's already at a level that would be difficult, if not impossible, to find here in the United States, at least, based on my subjective standards. So they take a lot of pride, and so there's actually a lot of ego and arrogance involved. Number two, not all of them, but oftentimes the ones that are great but not that great, they tend to put a very high price tag on what they create. That if you want to sample what they have put together, you need to pay their price, as opposed to the mystic virtue, which is more like freely sharing the goodness that comes from the infinite resource of the Tao. And next, they become very protective of their secrets. Recipes, ingredients, and techniques are all jealously guarded. So some of these chefs, I know that they will volunteer to cook for a meeting at the temple on a Sunday, and what they cook is pretty amazing. But I noticed that when they're cooking, they make it a point to close all the doors to the kitchen, and they disallow anyone from going into the kitchen because why? Because they will, steal the secrets that they have. The secret sauce, the secret ingredients, secret techniques, etc., all jealously guarded. Lastly, if they teach you even a little bit of what they know, they feel like you owe them a big favor. So these are all contrary to the mystic virtue. These may be good, these may be very good chefs, but they are certainly not the best of the best. For best of the best, I go to this lady that I know, what I call Chen Ganma, but here I'll just call Mrs. Chen. She's amazing. So when it comes to cooking, she definitely lives, number one, bearing without possession. She's the bearer of this genius level talent when it comes to culinary arts, but she's not possessive of that talent. She shares her gift with everyone. Number two, achieving without arrogance. Well, so that's one of the, even before I tasted her food, this lady that I call Chen Ganma, she's so down to earth. She has no ego about her person. I didn't realize that she had a special talent until I sat down for dinner, and then I was amazed. She's definitely the least overbearing person, one of the least overbearing people that I know. And number three, raising without domination. She will teach any dish to anyone at any time. When she's cooking, there's a lot of people who are curious, how did you do that, Mrs. Chen? So she will always be like, well, come look, I will show you. I will show you everything. She holds nothing back. She shows them exactly what she does to create a special flavor. And so one of the funny things that I noticed is that, when I stayed in Taiwan for a longer duration, I saw the process taking place where people are learning from her. They're taking notes furiously. Sometimes they're taking cell phone video. Then they go home and they try to replicate what she does. And sometimes they come close, but they can never quite capture that divine spark. It's rare that, and she says that, you really need to have a certain amount of talent to even be able to replicate what she does, to follow where she leads. Which, by the way, I'm very happy to report that my wife has picked up some of her special skills, which is the reason why soon after getting married, my weight went up by 30 pounds to 200 pounds. So I blame it on her and also blame it on Chen Ganma. I'm doing better now. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for your concern. I'm back down to 170 pounds. So that is what I would like to offer. She's, without question, 10 out of 10. I mean, she was never interested in being the head chef of a restaurant. If she was, I think she would have taught a generation of amazing chefs to carry on her legacy. But as it is right now, she has passed away, and that talent is gone from the world.
Let's go ahead and do the meeting ending ritual, everybody. 起立，面向佛堂，持架深鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，持架各位顶传十一鞠躬，斜翻一鞠躬。We're done, everybody. Thank you so much.